So good evening dear students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 26th October 2024 and in this session we have some articles from different newspapers. We'll try to discuss all these important articles in a very detailed and comprehensive manner so that this discussion will be helpful for your examination, and this discussion will be centered around both your mains as well as prelims exam preparations. So without any delay, let's start our discussion. And before that, yesterday I have given one prelims practice question. The question is in the context of Indian Parliament, who administers the oath of the pro tem speaker of the Lok Sabha, right? So I have told you that before any government is being formed, so speaker is not immediately elected. For a temporary purpose, a pro tem speaker is being appointed, and the question is who administers the oath of pro tem speaker of the Lok Sabha. So the correct answer for this particular question is President of India. So President of India administers the oath of pro tem speaker of the Lok Sabha. And you can see here the selection process of the pro tem speaker. So pro tem speaker is chosen by the president from the senior most members of the Lok Sabha, and in fact, so the pro tem speaker is also assisted by the other senior members of oath of administration. The president administers the oath to the pro tem speaker, who then swears in the other MPs. Now when the pro tem speaker is being appointed, so pro tem speaker administers the oath of the newly elected MPs of the Lok Sabha, right? So, and you can also go through some details with respect to the pro tem speaker. So what is a pro tem speaker and how is the pro tem speaker is being chosen, so all those things, so you can go through as well, right? So pro tem speaker is the presiding officer of the Lok Sabha, and in fact the speaker has to fulfill certain duties, and it is and the pro tem speaker is elected by a simple majority vote in the lower house until speaker is elected. And in fact pro tem speaker is appointed to administer some important duties. So if you look at those important duties of the pro tem speaker, so if you look at the meaning of pro tem, it actually means for the time being or for temporary purpose. Remember, I've told you that pro tem speaker is appointed for a temporary purpose until the new speaker is being elected. So therefore pro tem means temporary or for time being, and in fact constitution does not mention this post of pro tem speaker, but the official handbook on the working of Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs has mentioned about the appointment of the pro tem speaker as well as swearing in ceremony of the pro tem speaker, right? So these are some details with respect to the pro tem speaker. And today also we have one important prelims practice question. The question is emission gap report of 2024 is published by which of the following organizations? So your options are A, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, B, United Nations Environment Program, C, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and D, World Meteorological Organization. Remember, this is a very easy and simple question, and if you regularly follow our discussions and even news articles in different newspapers, you can easily answer this question. And in fact, so the nature of question is such that UPSC has been regularly asking this sort of questions. So therefore it is very important that you need to go through all the indexes as well as reports and the organizations and institutions which have been publishing these reports, right? So try to answer this question in the comment section, and we will be giving you the correct answer in tomorrow's class. And the first article that we are going to start this session is with the anti-defection law, right? So when we talk about the anti-defection law, I hope all of you knew about this anti-defection law and 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, right? So 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act so added 10th schedule to the Indian Constitution. You just remember one thing, that 10th schedule deals with the anti-defection law, and 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act added 10th schedule to the Indian Constitution. It deals with the anti-defection, so defection of political parties by the candidates, right? So they defect from one political party to another political party, and in fact it is very opportunistic and it leads to the instability or even fall of the government. So in order to prevent corruption and horse trading, right? So in order to prevent corruption and horse trading, ensure political stability ensure political stability. So this 10th schedule to the Indian Constitution as added by 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act. So we are going to discuss this in a very detailed manner. What is anti-defection law and why there is a need to pass an anti-defection law. So these are some reasons for passing an anti-defection law or having an anti-defection law in India, and what are the shortcomings or challenges in implementation of this 10th schedule anti-defection law, and what should be the way forward. So that is what we are going to discuss in this article. Now if you look at the context of this article, so the context is that the anti-defection law has played a crucial role in ensuring political stability in India, right? So how it ensures political stability? Because it disincentivizes or it punishes the defection of the candidates from one political party to another political party, that very often leads to the political instability. But there are a lot of gaps which have been existing in the implementation of anti-defection law, which needs to be addressed to make it more and more effective and even impartial, right? So as I have been emphasizing that anti-defection law has a lot of gaps and a lot of shortcomings, and therefore there is a need to bridge those gaps and shortcomings to make it more and more effective as well as impartial as well, right? So there are some details with respect to the anti-defection law. So as I have told you that 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which was passed in the year 1985, has added 10th schedule, which is anti-defection law. And in fact there are certain grounds for disqualifications for the members of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha and even state legislative assemblies as well. And in fact those grounds are mentioned in Article 102 Clause 2, 191 Clause 2 for MPs as well as member of state legislative assemblies, right? So in fact there are certain exceptions, and members would be defected. So if they are elected member, and if they voluntarily gives up the membership of the political party, and even they vote against the they vote against the whip issued by the political party that they belong to, so they would be disqualified. In fact they would be disqualified under the anti-defection law. And even an independent member and even a nominated member who shifts the political parties will also be defected. However, there are certain exceptions for this anti-defection law. So what are those exceptions? So the exceptions include speaker or chairman. So once he is elected as a speaker from one political party, so he is already a member of one political party, he's already a member of Lok Sabha, and then he will be elected as a speaker. So there is a convention that speaker has to resign from his political party, but even if a speaker resigns from his political party, he will not be declared disqualified. Secondly, party could be merged into another party. So in fact if there is any political party and within that political party 2/3 of members or 2/3 majority of the members agreed to merge with the another political party, then also exempted, this merger is exempted from the anti-defection law. And in fact some other details of the anti-defection law is that the presiding officer, the speaker of the Lok Sabha and even speaker of the state legislative assembly, the deciding authority for the disqualification under anti-defection law. And in fact Supreme Court's interpretation in G. Vishwanathan judgment in 1996 case. So in fact there are certain advantages and disadvantages as well. So we'll look into those advantages and disadvantages of anti-defection law, right? So as we have already emphasized that anti-defection law plays a very important role in ensuring political stability of the governments, right? Political stability. So when we talk about the anti-defection law, one thing that we need to remember that it ensures political stability. So how it ensures political stability? By upholding integrity, right? So it upholds the integrity of the democratic institutions, and it also upholds the integrity among the lawmakers. And in fact the anti-defection law in recent times has become a subject of great debate because of the shortcomings or the loopholes which are existed as of now. So the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, it was introduced in the year 1985, and in fact it was a law. It sought to address the rampant party switching by the legislators, which frequently led to the political instabilities, right? For example, imagine that at center there is a different political party A, and even at a state there is another political party B. Now imagine that if center wanted to if center wanted to make sure that there is a instability in the current government, so what the central government will do, central government will start attracting some members to another political party. For example, there is a political party, for example, BJP is in power at the center and Congress is in power at the state governments. So this happened in Madhya Pradesh, this happened in Karnataka also. Now what the central government will do, but on the other hand, in this particular state B, BJP is the second largest party in majority. Now the central government would start attracting more and more members, right? So by providing them the incentives, if they shift to another political party from Congress to BJP, for example, you will be declared as ministers. So what the central government will do, or the BJP will do, BJP will attract more and more members into its political party, and once BJP got the majority, so BJP will form the government, and ultimately Congress would lose its majority and it becomes the opposition political party. So this is how the anti-defection, this is how defections are being used in their advantage, in their favor. But anti-defection law would curb this trend, right? So anti-defection law addresses the rampant party switching by the legislator, which frequently led to the political instability as well. And in fact, while it has been somewhat effective in curbing the practice of defection, various loopholes and implementation issues have surfaced over time, so that necessitating further reforms. So in fact, so the Election Commission of India has been time and again has been emphasizing that there is a need for electoral reforms. So there is a need to reform the anti-defection law. For example, so when I talk about the reforms which are required in the anti-defection law, a speaker belongs to the ruling political parties. There is a convention that speaker is always selected from the ruling party, and in fact, so once a speaker belong to the ruling party, whatever ruling party do to woo or to attract more and more MPs from the opposition political parties or MLAs from the opposition political parties, a speaker will not take up those defection petitions, right? So since the authority to decide on the anti-defection petitions lies with the speaker, so speaker would be the final authority. So speaker, since he is from the ruling party, he's not taking up those aspects. So legislators would easily switch the political parties, and sometimes they also exchange for financial gains or for ministerial positions. So that very often leads to the fall of governments and the formation of new ones without any fresh elections taking place. And so the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which was passed in the year 1985, right? 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1985 has brought in the anti-defection law, and in fact Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. So under whose leadership this anti-defection law was brought in to curb or to prevent defections. So this law laid down certain grounds for the disqualification of members of parliament as well as state legislative assembly, so if they defect the political parties they belong to. And a member could be disqualified if they voluntarily gives up the membership of the political party. For example, one member belongs to one political party, and if he voluntarily gives up the membership of of the house from that particular political party, he would be disqualified under anti-defection law. And in fact, if a member voluntarily disobeyed the party whip and he voted against the party whip in key votes such as no confidence motion and budget approvals, so then also he will be disqualified under anti-defection law. And in fact, the law was aimed to providing stability to governments, and so a major concern is that there is a lack of stability in the Indian political system. So we have weak institutions, and democracy is not so robust in India, and people also not able to hold these elected representatives accountable. So therefore the defections are rampant. So in order to curb the rampant political defections, now what has done? So the government has brought in the anti-defection law to curb this anti-defections, right? So you can in fact go through some main provisions of the anti-defection law. For example, who will be disqualified and what are the grounds for the disqualification under anti-defection law. If a member of a political party voluntarily gives up his membership and he votes contrary to party direction, and independent members who joins any political party, and nominated members who join any political party after 6 months. So these are certain grounds for the disqualification of members as part of the anti-defection law. There are certain main provisions which are part of the anti-defection law, right? So speaker would be exempted, and even a merger of 2/3 of members would also be exempted, right? So these are certain exemptions as part of the anti-defection law. So there are certain implementation challenges within the anti-defection law. So what are those challenges? Now, first and foremost challenge is that a speaker is the final deciding authority in the anti-defection law, and speaker belongs to the ruling political party. So speaker very often not deciding on the petitions of the anti-defection. So some instances speakers have taken several months, right? So speakers have been taken a lot of months, or many months, or even years to take a decision on these anti-defection petitions. And in fact, this delay on the part of the speaker has further allowed the defectors to continue holding their positions as MLAs, MPs, or even they're being appointed as a ministers, thereby subverting the whole process of the anti-defection law. So therefore, in this context, it is very important that the speaker must be non-biased and speaker must be impartial for the effective implementation of the provisions of the anti-defection law, and also curb defections and ensure political stability. And in fact, the discretionary power vested in the speaker or the chairperson in this case of Rajya Sabha, so without any stipulated time frame for decision making, has often been a point of contention as well. So however, well, the decisions which are being made by the speaker or the chairperson are subjected to judicial review, and in fact one of the judgment the Supreme Court has held that whatever decisions that the speaker will take as part of the anti-defection law are for example, an anti-defection petition is being filed and speaker has not been taking any decision on these anti-defection petitions. Now what Supreme Court has said that it is part of the judicial review, and the courts have generally been reluctant to intervene on the matters of legislature and even defection cases, citing the need to respect the autonomy of the legislature and also respect the constitutional principle of separation of powers, right? So separation of powers, so within the Indian Constitution, these principles of separation of power and checks and balances are inherently recognized, right? So in fact, Supreme Court has also set the 3 months timeline or deadline to decide on the anti-defection petitions, right? So Supreme Court sets 3 months outer limit for speakers to conclude disqualification proceedings against the defectors as well. So one of the judgment the Supreme Court has held this, so you have to go through this as well, because it further adds value to the pre-existing knowledge of yours with respect to the anti-defection law. What is the importance of anti-defection law? Why we need to have such an anti-defection law? So remember, I have told you that in politics, horse trading, corruption. So horse trading and corruption are rampant, very heavy, and these factors have been leading to the instability, or you can say that there is a huge political instability across different levels. And in order to curb the political instability and horse trading corruption, so this anti-defection law has been brought in, right? So however, the anti-defection law has certain gaps and the challenges, and those challenges and gaps have to be addressed to make the law more effective as well as impartial as well, right? So in fact, there are a lot of amendments, a lot of reforms that are being suggested to the anti-defection law. For example, National Commission for Review Working of the Constitution has suggested some some reforms within the 10th schedule of the Constitution, and Law Commission has also recommended the same, and even the Election Commission of India has been time and again suggesting a lot of reforms within within the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution, anti-defection law, and even Association for Democratic Reforms, and even Dinesh Goswami Committee. So you have to mention all these different committees, right? So when you mention these committees in your answer, that adds value to your answer specifically. right? So amendments to the Indian constitution should be prioritized to facilitate effective implementation of the union government's one nation one election initiative, right? So we have several times discussed simultaneous polls. So in order to implement the simultaneous polls, it is very important that we need to we need to implement this anti-defection law in letter and spirit, right? So by implementing these amendments, anti-defection law can be revitalized to better serve its purpose in the current political context, and in fact it would ensure that the elected representatives adhere to the principles of party loyalty. So they should be a party loyalty, they should be loyal to the party, and they should be transparent and accountable to the people whom they elected, and discipline while also protecting the democratic mandate of the electorate is also very important. So you have to go through a certain provisions of the anti-defection law, because anti-defection law is one thing that is very important from your both prelims and mains examination perspective. So therefore you need to understand what are the exemptions and what are the grounds for the disqualification under the anti-defection law. That will help you master this in, and that will also help you score good marks if any question is being asked on anti-defection law, right? So the next important topic that we are going to start, and which is given in the Hindu newspaper. So this is a small editorial which is given in the Hindu, that India must develop a transparent carbon trade policy. Now when we talk about the carbon trade policy, this is in the context of the climate change, right? So this is in the context of climate change as well as the global warming, climate change and global warming contexts. This is being asked, right? So carbon trade policy generally, first and foremost, I'll try to explain what exactly is carbon trade in a carbon market, right? So there are two different industries, industry A and industry B. So these are also known as emitter A and emitter B, right? So these industries release a certain amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere every year. Now imagine that the government has come in because of the global warming and climate change. The government has come in, and the government has mandated that there are certain restrictions on the emissions of these industries, right? So there are certain restrictions. For example, the annual emissions should not be more than 100 million ton, right? So you cannot say 10 million ton. So the annual emissions of these industries are not more than 10 million tons from each industry. So this is for an example, right? So now emitter A, what it has done, so it has exceeded the mark of 10 million ton, and it has reached to around 13 million ton. It has reached up to the 13 million ton. So this is what emitter A. So therefore it breached the government's stipulated standards of emission, or regulation of emissions were breached by the emitter A. But on the other hand, there's another emitter, another industry B. So that has emitted just 7 million tons of greenhouse gases, but still it is 3 more million tons. But so since industry B has invested a lot in renewable energies and even energy efficient technologies, now what happened was that, so industry B well below the stipulated standards, regulations of the government, that it has just emitted 7 million tons of greenhouse gases, but still it has 3 million tons of incentive with it. But on the other hand, emitter A has produced more than 10 million ton, more than stipulated norms of the government. So now in this context, what emitter A has to do, so emitter A has to go to the carbon market, because 3 million tons incentive left to the emitter B can be sold in a carbon market, and this emitter A has to purchase those 3 million tons in order to make sure that it is well within the stipulated norms of carbon emissions by the government, right? So this is what is known as carbon market. Now whatever industries which have been invested in renewable energies and even energy efficient technologies, so they will be incentivized by selling those extra carbon emission units in the carbon market, so thereby earning a decent amount of income. So this incentivizes the company, but on the other hand this costs a lot on emitter A, and this, in this context, emitter A also starts investing heavily in renewable energy as well as energy efficient technologies. Now what is the context of this article? So the context is that, so the 29th session of the Conference of Parties to the Paris, or United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, will be held in Baku, Azerbaijan. So next month this is going to be held, and in fact there is a renewed energy in the government circles to accelerate Indian industries overall transition into the carbon markets, right? So in fact there is a renewed push or sustained push to make sure that Indian industries or Indian markets would be would make a transition, would make a shift towards the renewable forms of energy, right? So in this context, so it is very, very important to understand, right? So while the broader theme of this edition of the Conference of Parties is that increasing ambition on the climate finance, so climate finance is a very important, right? So when we talk about the climate finance, so climate finance is very important. So it is important because with climate finance what we can do, so we can offset carbon, we can offset carbon, and apart from offsetting carbon, so the climate finance can be used for reforestation and mitigation, adaptation works can be undertaken, mitigation and adaptation works can be undertaken, and climate resilience can be achieved. Climate resilience can be achieved. So how climate resilience will be achieved? So investing in renewable energy as well as energy efficiency methods, right? So investing in energy efficiency as well as renewable energy methods, what we can do, so we can make sure that the climate goals or climate commitments can be fulfilled, or they can be met effectively by doing these things, right? So carbon markets usually incentivizes the climate action by enabling parties to trade in the carbon credits. So these carbon credits would be generated or would be given to the industries, and they will be given to the individuals as well who have done a lot of work in terms of waste management, in terms of afforestation activities or reforestation activities. They will also be given carbon credits, and those carbon credits can be sold in the markets, and they can earn a decent amount of income by selling these carbon credits, which are being generated by the reduction or removal of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, right? So there's a cycle which is given here, and if you draw such diagrams in your answer, it would be more and more attractive, and there's also a high probability that you will score a good marks in the in those answers, such as switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy, or even enhancing or conserving carbon stocks in ecosystems such as forests. So all these things would be would incentivizes you by providing carbon credits, and those carbon credits can be sold in the markets, and you would receive income for the positive actions on the environment. Well, carbon markets came into existence nearly 2 decades ago, but they have been plagued by opacity and even criticism that they only created the illusion of emission reduction or emission reduction methods. And apart from that, India, due to its voluntary commitments with respect to reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, so India, due to its voluntary commitment to generate around half of its electricity from the non-fossil energy sources by the 2030. And here I would like to emphasize on the Panchamrit commitments, right? So Prime Minister Narendra Modi made these Panchamrit commitments at Glasgow summit. So we would like to reduce 50% of emissions from the greenhouse gases from the fossil fuels, right? So by the year 2030. So we, on the backdrop of this promise, this commitment, so it stands to gain as the host of several carbon reduction projects. And additionally, there are some mushrooming private sector enterprises in India setting up innovative forestry projects, and that reportedly lack carbon and can be claimed as credits by multinational companies traded through so-called voluntary carbon markets as well. And in fact, if you look at the major emitters in Indian industry, particularly the iron and steel industries are the major industries which are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But the long-term goal is to make sure that these industry make a transition towards renewable or even more energy efficient methods, so that could help reduce the emissions from these industries, right? India's iron and steel industries are among the 9 types of industries expected, and in fact, to meet emission intensity standards by the year 2025, by restricting the amount of carbon per unit of production, this will depending on the regulatory enforcement on the part of the government, so that will formally kickstarts India's carbon market. So in order to do so, in order to achieve objectives and the commitments of India, it is very important that we need to have a fair carbon market or fair carbon trade policy in India. So that is very important to achieve all the carbon commitments that we already have. So next important articles is that government doubles loan limit under Mudra scheme to 20 lakhs. So in this context, we'll try to understand what is this Mudra scheme and what are the objectives, why the government has launched this Mudra scheme. So the context is that the government has recently increased the loan limit under Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana from 10 lakh to 20 lakh. So introducing a new Tarun Plus category, so aimed at supporting the emerging entrepreneurs. So I'll tell you what is this Tarun Plus category. So under Mudra scheme, so loans are categorized into 3 different types, right? So Shishu, Kishore and Tarun, right? So loans are categorized into 3 different types: Shishu, Kishore and Tarun. So up to 50 lakh, so up to 50,000 loan under Sishu, and 50,000 to 2 lakh under Kishore, and from rupees 2 lakh to 10 lakh under Tarun category. So this is how Mudra loans are being categorized into different loans. But recently the government has also introduced Tarun Plus, another category of loans within the Mudra scheme. So under Tarun, so the loan limit under Mudra scheme will be further increased to 10 lakh to 20 lakh, right? So this is how the loans are being categorized, and this enhancement of loan will further aid the aspiring entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs, for the growth and expansion of their respective units, as well as furthering the Mudra scheme's mission to fund the unfunded and even strengthen India's entrepreneurial ecosystem as well. So that is the context of this article, and we'll understand what is the Mudra scheme. So I've told you that a type of loan which is being provided under the Mudra Yojana include Sishu, Kishore as well as Tarun. But recently the government has introduced another category of loans, that is Tarun Plus. So under Tarun Plus, it will be increased from 10 lakh to 20 lakh. And Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, it was a scheme which is launched in April 2015, right? So after April 2015, the scheme was launched for providing loans up to 10 lakh to the non-corporate, non-firm and even small micro entrepreneurs. So that is the objective, and in fact this Mudra scheme covers non-corporate, non-firm and small micro enterprises. So these loans are classified into Mudra loans under Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, and these loans are given by commercial banks, regional rural banks, small finance banks, mutual fund institutions and even non-banking financial companies, right? So all these banks would be given mudra loans, and in fact mudra is a refinancing agency. So mudra a refinancing agency, but it will not directly lend funds to the eligible individuals. Rather, mudra scheme an intermediary between the individuals as well as different banks. So therefore mudra, which stands for micro units development and refinancing limited, is a financial institution that was established, that was set up by the government to provide these loans. And in fact it provides funding to the non-corporate small business sector through various last mile financial institutions such as banks, non-banking financial companies, and even the mutual fund institutions as well. Now what are the benefits of Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana? So Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana usually have a lot of benefits. So if you look at those benefits, so under this mudra scheme there is no collateral security is being asked. So the borrowers do not need to furnish any form of collateral to procure these loans, right? So there is no need to provide any collateral, because normally if you take any loan from any bank, banks will ask you a collateral. So without collateral they will not lend you money. But on the other hand, with the respect to mudra scheme, you no need to provide any collateral to procure these loans. Hence one doesn't need to risk one's personal or even business property in order to secure some funds. And in fact under mudra scheme or mudra yojana, funds are easily available to the entrepreneurs who trying to set up the micro-sized enterprises anywhere in India and in almost every industry domain as well. And in fact there is also a defaulting procedure. So what is this defaulting procedure? So in case defaulting the loan legally due to some unforeseen circumstances by any individual who have taken loan under this mudra yojana, so or due to any other losses due to natural causes, the government bears the total and complete responsibility to repay the loan. And this is another added advantage of the mudra scheme, right? So so MSMEs, small sized units, which are starving for funds, which lack funds, and funding would significantly help revive those respective industries. So mudra scheme would readily provide access to the funding. And quick capital, so the loans under the mudra scheme are available to micro-sized enterprises in a quick and effortless manner. So loans up to 10 lakh can be easily availed in this process. And in fact women entrepreneurs have added a special concessional benefits to the loans offered under the mudra scheme. So it will also lead to the rural empowerment, because mudra yojana loans are equally available to small scale businesses in both rural and urban areas besides rural local bodies. So therefore everyone will get benefited from this mudra schemes because of its accessibility and even the government's interest to provide or to dispatch more and more loans under this mudra scheme. So these are certain benefits. And next important question, so right, because it's right, so the question is about Indian monsoon, right? So currently the monsoon is in the retreating phase, so it is known as a retreating monsoon. So retreating monsoon is also known as northeast monsoon, and northeast monsoon times we experience certain cyclones or cyclonic disturbances. So recently we have experienced cyclone Dana on the eastern coast of India, so which impacted the Odisha coast, which made a landfall in Odisha's coast. So the question is, Indian monsoon is an important part of global monsoon system, account of changing patterns of Indian monsoon over the subcontinents and bring out its impact. Okay, so in fact the question has been asking us that Indian monsoon is a very, very important part of global monsoon system. So this is the first part of the answer. And the second part of the answer, so you need to write some changes which have been taking place over the Indian monsoon, and also bring out its impact as well. So this is the question. So in the introduction itself, what you need to write is that monsoons are seasonal winds or seasonal reversal of wind direction. So that is known as the monsoon, right? So monsoons are seasonal winds which reverse their direction. For example, during the south west monsoon times, so they they distribute, they spread across Indian subcontinent from north southwest side, but on the other hand from October to March period, so they flow from the northeastern side, right? So seasonal reversal of wind direction with the change of season. So the monsoon is a double system of seasonal winds, right? So you can see here the double system of seasonal winds, and in fact a seasonal reversal of wind direction also takes place. So they flow from the sea to land during the summer, from the Indian Ocean, from Arabian Ocean, Kerala coast, then distribution of entire Indian subcontinent during summers, from land to sea during the winter times. So monsoons are peculiar, unique to Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, and parts of Central Western Africa as well. And in fact, so Indian monsoons are convection cells for a very large scale, and they are periodic secondary winds with seasonal reversal of wind direction. So this is how you can write an introduction, and you can also make sure that this introduction is brief and not too lengthy. And the first part of the answer, Indian monsoon and its significance to the global monsoon system. So no need to write this elaborately, just you need to write this in a brief manner. So in fact, there's no doubt that Indian agriculture or agriculture in most of the South Asian and Southeast Asian countries are rain fed, so they depend on monsoon rains, right? So particularly we are the countries with poor infrastructure, and there is also increasing urbanization, and still a majority number of people dependent on the agriculture sector. So you can imagine that how monsoon or monsoon rains plays a very important role in these respective countries, right? So very often there is a failure of monsoon because of conditions like El Nino. So when there are El Nino like conditions, it leads to a less rainfall over the Indian subcontinent, and even drought like conditions, and at that point of time, so there is a failure of a large number of crops, and that also create a lot of food security issues in India, right? So therefore a lot of societies which are currently vulnerable because of a number of challenges that they have been facing, the variable monsoon rainfall would have much more impact. So in fact, the culture and the lifestyle in these respective countries have evolved around cyclical nature, and agriculture is still the most common form of land use in most of these countries, particularly in South Asia. And the second part of the answer is that changing patterns of Indian monsoon over the subcontinents. So how the monsoon patterns have been changing over the Indian subcontinent, so that is what we need to understand. So the first and foremost thing that we need to talk about is climate change and its impact on the monsoon. So climate change has been ruining quite a few things, such and Indian monsoon might be one of them. And the worst part of here is that so effects of Indian monsoon are also felt by others and not just India, so therefore making it an active feature of the weather across the globe. And in fact, a recent research has also confirmed that monsoon in Asia is twined with aspects of global climate, along with having an influence over global atmospheric circulations, and that is what the El Nino and La Nina like conditions, and even Indian Ocean dipole. So when we talk about the Indian Ocean dipole, positive Indian Ocean dipole and negative Indian Ocean dipole, so they also impacting the monsoon winds and its circulation. So climate change, so these weather patterns, weather phenomena also have a crucial impact on the Indian monsoon and weather phenomena. Since 1950, average summer rains in India have declined by around 7%, and due to climate change and global warming, this trend will continue further. So what should be the way forward? You can also discuss a way forward. So no doubt we could say that monsoon play a very important, very big role in India, and in fact it also has several social, political as well as economic implications on the people. And in fact, so monsoon not only affect the crops, agriculture, and even incomes of the farmers, and it also impacts the food security, and it also impacts the industries as well. Right? So because the primary agriculture is the primary sector and industry is the secondary sector, right? So it is a secondary sector, but secondary sector is dependent on the primary sector's performance. So if there are no rains and if there is a failure of the monsoon, that also impacts overall industries, industrial growth and development in India. And Indian economy is primarily monsoon dependent economy, and that also requires climate sensitive budgeting as well. And in fact, the excessive dependence on the monsoon is not a prudent policy as of now for for a country like India, which has a lot of aspirations. Because of climate change and global warming, the monsoon trends have also been changing, the rainfall trend has also been changing. So therefore the excessive dependence on the monsoon can be reduced or can be mitigated by construction of modern irrigation channels, afforestation and even diversification of Indian industries. Farmers, especially the small landholder farmers, need advanced warning emergent weather conditions at the local level. So therefore we need to build adaptive capacities to climate variability and even need to strengthen the sustainability of the farming systems. So all these things have to be done, so in order to make sure that the failure of the monsoon can be met, and we need to make our existing systems, both industry and agriculture, more and more resilient to the failure of the monsoon. And that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So if you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. So thank you.